Yo, Ozzy from Ascension, and this is a different sort of video. This is a video that covers books, at least one video of the multiple videos I do um, on this channel. I wanted to be focused around books. As you know, my book is coming out. I want to bring more and more attention to it the more time it goes, because by the time it comes out, I want as many people to read it as possible, even though it might be shit. Anyways, I don't want to waste your time, so I might as well jump straight into it. Before I jump straight into it, I do have to mention this list won't be consistent of like the top 10 fantasy novel books of all time, because everyone knows what they would be. Like, Game of Thrones, well, A Song of Ice and Fire, it will be books like that. Harry Potter's, it will be Lord of the Rings, it will be them books that are very iconic and very huge and very big. I'm talking about books that came out in the 2010s, and why I think they are the top 10. Did I say games? Books in the 2010s, and why I think they are the best books at this moment from the 2010s upwards. So let's start with number 10. We have this brilliant book from 2012, which is called Throne of the Crescent Moon by Saladin Ahmed. And I say it's brilliant because of how typical it is, as the tropes that are used in this book is very known from the 70s, 60s, 50s, 40s with Lord of the Rings and stuff. It's the typical good guys facing bad guys. The villain needs to be stopped, and a ragtag group of friends. Well, I say friends, they're not really friends, they're just kind of like people launched together who have to find a way through their defenses. If you can hear that noise, sorry about that. But what stands out, apart from everything else in this book, is the idea that everything about its fantasy world is actually not taken from medieval Europe, which you see over and over and over again. It's actually taken from slash heavily drawn from Middle Eastern mythology, which I found extremely interesting and what actually captivated me from the book. And number 9, with a book that takes fantastical elements and still manages to ground the world that is in, more like Colorine or anything you've read like that, where it's got a realistic tone, but it's definitely a fantasy book, is The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. Now, Neil Gaiman, from what I know, is a children's author, and you can tell from this book that he is a children's author. The story is on the point of view of a child, and there's many elements which scream that, oh, this is for children, but there's also many elements which scream that it's not, because it's a book that explores friendship and sacrifice and family dysfunction in a slightly fantasy world. It's a really, really mysterious book. Even though I couldn't tell a lot of times what was actually going to happen by the end of the book, it still captivated me and made me continue reading. And that's what you want in a book sometimes. Well, you want a lot more, but that's the main thing, to continue reading, to solve the mysteries that are involved in it. At number 8, I don't want to spoil it too much, but I will highly recommend a book called Before the Devil Breaks You by Libel Bray from 2017. Simply put, it's as magical as it is relevant, reflecting on the challenging themes we grabbed throughout the 2010s. It features superpower casts that includes a flame-handed flapper, a pickpocketer, and a healer. I recommend you read this book. It's loosely based on the real world with like demons and ghosts and everything involved. It reminds me of, like, how can I say, maybe Daredevil? No, not Daredevil. It reminds me a bit of Constantine. If you've ever read about Constantine, there's some elements in here that you understand why it reminds me of Constantine. The cast, you love them. They're quirky, they're interesting, as you would in most books, and the adventure is quite cool. It's really hard not to spoil this book because it captivated me from the beginning to the end. I genuinely don't really want to talk much about it, so I'm just gonna move on to number 7. Okay, at number 7, Huge disclaimer here. Some of the topics I talk about here are very, very sensitive. Topics that include, disclaimer again, like sexual violence, rape, genocide, and everything involved. It's a book called Who Fears Death by, I cannot say her name. It's really hard to say. I think it's Nedi or Karafa. I probably butchered that. It came out in 2010. And it's one of, because I like dark fantasy stories, as my book is heavily based on dark fantasy. This book is set in a post-nuclear Holocaust Africa. The book follows a child of rape destined to become a sorcerer. It it is a hard read. I won't even lie. It's a hard read for someone who's not really used to dark fantasy books because it does not hold back. It has everything from sexual violence to genocide to war to religion. It's a mesmerizing read. I've not heard of this author a lot, but from what I've searched up, she's actually quite a well-respected author. She was even involved in a Star Wars short story about the Thrush compactor monster. But her standalone levels, Who Fears Death, is magnificent. It's beyond magnificent. It's harrowing. It's amazing. It's interesting. It's dark. It's an award winner. I don't know what else to tell you. This is a book that will become a TV show and movie. I can see it happening. It will probably be on Netflix, HBO, or something along those lines. But it's dark as hell, and well, it's not really the darkest thing I've ever read, but it's captivating enough to keep people interested. Now, to continue with the trend with the very, very dark fantasy type books, I'd like to talk about The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. It's from 2018, and another disclaimer, this is about, well, it's not about, it's heavily inspired by the 1937 rape of Nanjing and the results of the results in a devastating raid. If you can handle this, if you can handle the past book, I'm sure you can handle this, but since this taps into the events of the past that actually happened, it could be regarded as a much darker exploration of dark fantasy books. It does not hold back. It does show you the it does show you just the brutality of war, because it gradually transforms into exploration in its cost. It's a good book to read, but again, it's something that people who are used to this type of content will enjoy more. People who are not, I cannot recommend it. It's actually a dark book. That and the last one. But for me, I like this content. I know I'm a weird person, but I like this content, so it captivates me and makes me want to tell people to go read it if you're used to it, by the way. At number 5 or 4, I've actually fully lost track now, is The Will of the King by Brandon Sanderson from 2010. Brandon Sanderson is easily a master of fantasy. Like he's amazing at world building. He's insane at magical systems, and his character development is bar to none. All of these aspects are shown in this. If you've known of Brandon, then you know that he's a amazing fantasy writer who I recommend anyone should read. The book focuses on Kaladin, a soldier betrayed by his commander, sold into slavery. You can just roughly guess what goes on from there. If you like Brandon, if you like a well-written standard fantasy book about someone who's fighting through slavery, endless war, everything involved in that, brotherhood, death, redemption, just everything you'd imagine, including in a fantasy world of things you'd have seen similar, then I recommend this book heavily. I need to stop using the word heavily. But at number 4 or 3, again, I've lost track of which number I'm in. The Wise Man's Fear of Patrick Rothfuss. Well, I said that completely wrong. The Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss, sorry. It was made in 2011, but it's set in 2000 and What year is it in? I forgot what year it's actually set in. I don't think there's actually a year it's set in. It's a book that's narrated by an innkeeper about an orphan musician's journey to be a feared king killer. It's got everything you think in a fantasy. It's got romance, villain, adventure, and depth. It's a standard fantasy book with newer elements that you will not see very often. I like this type of books. They're easy read, they're formulatic, but downright, it's pretty good. Some people do not like things that have been done before, but when it's done right, it's amazing. Just like this book, A Wise Man's Fear. And number 3 or 2. I'll still do 3 more. In fact, let's just go number 3 now. If it's 11, then whatever. It's 11 at this point. And number 3 is I do not know much about Madeleine Miller, but I do know that she's really good at Greek literature. For example, the Song of Achilles, which was I think that was the first thing she actually wrote. It was the first thing I read of her. That's why I recognized her work. Now, from reading this, I can already tell that it's inspired by maybe Homer's The Odyssey, or well, yeah, I think it is inspired by Homer's The Odyssey. And when I think about it, the book is basically about the main character being banished by Zeus to a desert island, and she becomes an extraordinary witch. If you like ancient Greek mythology and retellings or reimaginings of ancient Greek literature, then I recommend this book. If you like the Song of Achilles, then I highly recommend this book because it hits the same beats as the other one, and you can tell that this author is incredible when it comes to this type of literature, really. And number 2 might not be people's favorite number 2. In fact, it might be lower rated than people mainly because the author of this book is actually, this is his debut. I think it was their debut, to be honest. But let me just jump straight into it. Number 2, we have Children of Blood and Bone by Tommy Adeyemi. I butchered that name, I'm sorry. It's from 2018. I believe it's a debut. Hell, I think this is actually a bestseller. It's such a good book. Let me just run through quickly what it's about. It's set in a world where magic is banned and a ruthless monarch seeks to kill those who possess magical gifts. Zalia, it's kind of hard to say. I don't know how to say his name. I have to know from the author how to actually say that name. It's a teen with the powers of her own. And it's a revenge story. It is really a revenge story of the people of her people who are oppressed and the people who killed her mother. It is violent. It is amazing. There's love. There's freedom to fight. There's everything I want in a goddamn fantasy book put into this. It is just not enough. Maybe tremendous monsters and mythical creatures that you wouldn't even imagine. But other than that, this is everything I want in a dark fantasy book. It's goddamn exciting to read. I read this and thought, wow, how is this someone's debut novel? I did not think in my head how. I think it is a debut novel. I read somewhere that it is. And if it is, I want to be able to write something this goddamn good as my debut novel. Hopefully this book which I've wrote is as good as this, or even better. Actually, I want to do it better. I'm a competitive like that. And I know I'm cheating a little bit with this number 1 because it's not really a standalone book, and I'm going back to old tropes of bringing up authors who are already established as like this goddamn mythical figures, basically. But I cannot give it to anyone else. A Dance with Dragons has to be one of the best goddamn books I have read in the 2010s, quite easily. It's so captivating. It's so good. It's so amazing. It's literally in the aftermath of a colossal battle, and it's just It's genuinely the reason why people do not mind that George R. R. Martin takes so long to write books. Because when he writes a good book, he writes a goddamn classic. That is the only way I can describe A Dance with Dragons from George R. R. Martin. And it will make you forget about the terrible, terrible goddamn show in its last season because it's quite good. It came out in 2011 and it's still a good entrance book for people who want to get into either Game of Thrones. I mean, you could start from, into A Song of Ice and Fire, I have to say, right? But you could start from the first book, but even if you start from this, this is a book I actually started from when I was reading Game of Thrones after when I was watching Game of Thrones. I think it was, I forgot what season it was where it ended, but I think it was season 3 or 4 actually where it ended. And I just thought, oh, I'll just pick up this book. And that is the first goddamn book from George R. R. Martin which I read. And then at that moment, I understood why people praise this guy as one of the greatest writers of our generation. But yeah, that's everything. Hope you enjoyed this video. It's a bit of a different thing for me to do, but if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all that nonsense, and I'll talk to you later. Peace.